My name is Arnold Tsunga. I'm the Senior Resident Director at the National Democratic Institute based in Zimbabwe. What I can say is that we have been seeing democracy in regression in a number of regions in Africa. There's been threats and in some instances closure of civic space. And some of the characteristics have included the passage of repressive legislation. As we go into the post-COVID situation, we see that the new normal in terms of suppression of rights is extended in itself. And then one of the big challenges in terms of future of Africa's democracy is how we can build back better in a way that we can actually restore our democratic standards. As the democracy expectations of the people of Africa have been met? The answer is simply no. They've been partially met in some countries which have got good constitutional and electoral practices. I think South Africa is one of them. Malawi has emerged as a very strong country on that front. So is Zambia and Ghana. So we have a number of countries really where the electoral process can actually be a global standard. However, in a number of African countries, the mismatch between the African standards and norms on the one hand and the experiences and practices on the other is so staggering. That mismatch can only be explained on the basis not of lack of capacity, but really, I think, lack of commitment and lack of political will. It may also explain aspects of apathy in that the confidence of people in believing that their vote matters, that their vote counts, is reduced significantly because it appears like there's a fait accompli that those who have got such an appetite for power and see power as an end in itself almost always have their way. And elections become an instrument of power acquisition rather than an opportunity for the electorate to exercise the sovereign right to deploy people into public office. And this is why we've seen a resurgence of unconstitutional changes of government, military coups, and power grabs, to the extent that we have seen about 7 to 8 coups since 2021 in Chad, in Mali, in Guinea, in Sudan, in Guinea-Bissau, in Burkina Faso twice, and Mali it has also been twice. And then a number of attempted coups in Madagascar, in the Central African Republic, in Niger, and Djibouti. So this shows that democracy has not been able to deliver, and people are now looking at alternative ways of power acquisition. But it's not only a problem in countries that have got coups. In countries like Zimbabwe, for example, where democracy has not been able to deliver. That Zimbabwe right now, as we speak, has got the highest level of inflation in the world at just below 400%, with huge forced migration, where about 4 million out of 15 million people are forced to be living outside of their borders because of the low intensity conflict that has deprived them of opportunities. The country is at the forefront of passing and promulgating repressive pieces of legislation. Currently, there is an effort to pass the PVO, which is Private Voluntary Organization Act, that is going to create a new regulatory framework in Zimbabwe under the guise of complying with the Financial Action Task Force recommendation number 8, targeting dealing with terrorism and countering financing of terrorism, as well as dealing with anti-money laundering. So the excuse there is to then create a legislation that will be used to close legally existing NGOs, but at the same time, those that remain operational to then interfere with their operational capabilities. We have seen an attempt at promulgation of such laws in Mozambique, in Malawi, and Ethiopia, in Uganda, and in Tanzania. Those laws were passed in order to influence the participation of civil society in the electoral process. Ultimately, democracy is about participation and inclusion, equality, and the counting of every vote. So when you see the participation of people getting low through what we call apathy, it's usually a sign that there's a problem with the growth of democracy. People don't see the link, the causal connection between their participation in an election and the socioeconomic conditions that arise as a result of either participation or not participation. Africa has a lot to celebrate in terms of the development of democracy, especially at the standards development, at the aspirational aspects of Africa's existence. The African Union has developed solid legal and international human rights law framework governing holding of democratic elections as a basis for fostering a culture of good, democratic, and accountable governance on the continent. And the AU principles governing democratic elections, they actually stipulate quite unequivocally that democratic elections are the basis of the authority of any representative government. If you then add onto this the Africa Charter on Democracy, Elections and Good Governance, we actually have a set of international standards that, if they could transform into operational reality on the ground, we would actually have a basis where there can be the rule of law. We can have free and fair elections, and there can be a minimization of unconstitutional changes of government. If you do that, you will see that our key institutions for delivery, for protection, and for strengthening of democracy will improve. It means election management bodies will begin to standardize their practices and hold each other to account in terms of how elections are held. It will mean that the judiciaries begin to develop a shared value around the rule of law, around jurisprudence that has the effect of having the spirit of African instruments. From a vision perspective, I think we have an excellent vision as a continent, and I'm very happy to say that many of us should be aiming to be part and parcel of the implementation of that vision.